I recently moved to Kentucky with the idea of homesteading. So my eyes sort of turned to the land, seeing what was already there, what was being produced that I could use as a resource, maybe even eat. There were several large oaks outside my house, and while I've never foraged, I felt that this was an approachable first attempt at foraging. Now, before foraging acorns, I read a lot online, so this is a mix of what I learned and my own personal experience. If you know anything about foraging or foraging acorns in particular, please share your thoughts and experiences in a comment down below. It definitely took me longer than I thought it would to collect a sizable amount of acorns, but even though it was slow going, it was rather enjoyable. Just being outside and thinking that I was, just picking food off the ground. At first, I thought, of course, this is free food. Later, I would find out that there's still a whole lot of work involved, and rarely is anything truly free. When collecting acorns, be sure to inspect every single one as you go, just giving it a quick once over to see if there are any holes, which are from acorn worms that have emerged. The acorns that I was collecting were from a chinkapin oak, which is a white oak. In my reading, I learned that there are two main groups of oaks, white oaks and red oaks. If you're collecting acorns, you definitely want to get some from a white oak. They typically have rounded lobe leaves, where red oaks have pointy leaves. Red oaks contain more tannins. White oaks still contain tannins that need to be dealt with, but to a much lesser degree. Tannins don't taste good, having a sort of dry, astringent taste, and also they're bad for you if eaten in large quantities. And even though acorns from white oaks have fewer tannins, you still need to process them to remove them. I was happy to find out that chinkapin oaks have some of the least amount of tannins of the white oaks and need very minimal processing, which was great for my first time doing this. After I collected a sizable amount of acorns, after about an hour, hour and a half, I moved to the next step of cleaning them and doing a float test. By submerging all of the acorns in water, you see which ones float to the top. Ones that float to the top have air in them. Either that is from the worms that are inside of them, or that they've just dried out and aren't that good. I skimmed all of these that were floating off the top, which seemed to be about half of the acorns that I collected, and discarded them. Now this may have been higher given that I was taking them off the ground and some of them may have been sitting there longer. So it might be good to try to get them from the tree, shaking them off the branches and collecting them directly. Next was the most tedious step of the process, cracking acorns. I gained a whole new appreciation for eating nuts in general, given all the time that it took for me to crack open these acorns. I don't know if there's a faster way to do this than one by one with a hammer, but it was definitely time consuming. Once I had my acorn shelled, moved on to removing the tannins. This can be done in a few ways, all involving water. When soaked in water, the tannins leach out from the acorns. Native Americans used to place a basket of shelled acorns in the water and let the running water just slowly remove those tannins. I didn't have access to a clean stream, so I opted for one of the two modern ways of doing it. You can add them to boiling water on the stove, and the tannins leach out and create a nice tea color. I went with the cold soak method, which I thought would be sufficient given that I had learned that chinkapin acorns have fewer tannins than others. I soaked my acorns overnight and woke up to find a nice tea colored liquid, which then I drained off. And then I refilled the container again with water and popped it in the fridge for more cold soaking to leach those tannins. After another day of this, I thought that they had been sufficiently removed. I ate a few raw ones and they tasted pretty good. But I wanted to try roasted acorns, as I love roasted cashews and other nuts, and thought that this would be the good way to go. This is where I messed up. I really wish that I had kept the acorns raw, dried them out, and turned them into a flour, because as I said, I thought that they were pretty good raw. Roasting them was not my favorite. They didn't have a nice crunch like other nuts, just sort of turned a little bit harder and dense. So maybe I did something wrong here by roasting them in the oven at 350 degrees for 25 minutes, but just wasn't great. I also wish that I had put salt on before roasting them, as trying to salt them afterwards just resulted in the salt not sticking and falling to the bottom. For my first foraging experience, I don't know if I would call it a success, but it was very enjoyable, and it has piqued my interest in harvesting other nuts. On my property, I also have hickories, some black walnut, and Chinese chestnuts. Then there are the more exotic things, like this burdock, which is invasive, but I hear the roots are edible, and who knows what else I have growing on my property.